Imagine the internet like a busy highway. Cars are like websites and apps that zoom around carrying information for people to use. But behind the scenes, there are smaller roads like APIs that connect everything together. These hidden roads handle most of the traffic, over 80%. The problem is, even though they're so important, not everyone checks if these hidden roads are safe. Hackers are like clever foxes who might sneak onto these quiet roads to find weak spots and cause big trouble. That's why it's crucial to make sure these hidden roads are strong and secure, just like the big highways. This playlist explains why APIs are like an open door for hackers. These tools give apps access to information, which might include important stuff. Hackers wouldn't need to climb walls or use magic tricks to steal it. Instead, they could just ask politely using the right key. An example is a well-crafted API request. That's why we need to make sure these doors are locked tight, just like any other entrance, or else anyone could walk in and take what they want. In 2017, The Economist, one of the leading sources of information for international business, ran the following headline: "The world's most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data." APIs are digital pipelines that allow a precious commodity to flow across the world in the blink of an eye. Simply put, an API is a technology that enables communication between different applications. When, for example, a Python application needs to interact with the functionality of a Java app, things can get messy very quickly. By relying on APIs, developers can design modular applications that leverage the expertise of other applications. For example, they no longer need to create their own custom software to implement maps, payment processors, machine learning algorithms, or authentication processes. As a result, many modern web applications have been quick to adopt APIs. Yet new technologies often get quite a head start before cybersecurity has a chance to ask any questions, and APIs have hugely expanded these applications' attack surfaces. They've been so poorly defended that attackers can use them as a direct route to their data. In addition, many APIs lack the security controls that other attack vectors have in place, making them the equivalent of the Death Star's thermal exhaust port, a path to doom and destruction for businesses. Due to these reasons, Gartner predicted years ago that by 2022, APIs will be the leading attack vector. As hackers, we need to secure them by putting on our rollerblades, strapping the Acme rocket to our backs, and catching up to the speed of technological innovation. By attacking APIs, reporting our findings, and communicating risks to the business, we can do our part to thwart cybercrime. Attacking APIs is not as challenging as you may think. Once you understand how they operate, hacking them is only a matter of issuing the right HTTP requests. That said, the tools and techniques typically leveraged to perform bug hunting and web application penetration testing do not translate well to APIs. You can't, for instance, throw a generic vulnerability scan at an API and expect useful results. I've often run these scans against vulnerable APIs only to receive false negatives. When APIs are not tested properly, organizations are given a false sense of security that leaves them with a risk of being compromised. Each section of this playlist will build upon the previous one. Part 1 is about how web API security works. First, I will introduce you to the basic knowledge you need about web applications and the APIs that power them. You'll learn about REST APIs, the main topic of this playlist, as well as the increasingly popular GraphQL API format. I will also cover the most common API-related vulnerabilities you can expect to find. In Part 2, which is building an API testing lab, you'll build your API hacking system and develop an understanding of the tools in play, including Burp Suite, Postman, and a variety of others. You'll also set up a lab of vulnerable targets you'll practice attacking throughout this playlist. In Part 3, we'll turn to the API hacking methodology, and I'll walk you through performing common attacks against APIs. Here the fun begins. You'll discover APIs through the use of open-source intelligence techniques, analyze them to understand their attack surface, and finally dive into various attacks against them, such as injections. You'll learn how to reverse engineer an API, bypass its authentication, and fuzz it for a variety of security issues. Last but not the least, the final part, real-world API hacking, is dedicated to showing you how API weaknesses have been exploited in data breaches and bug bounties. You'll learn how hackers have employed the techniques that will be covered throughout the playlist in real-world situations. You'll also walk through a sample attack against a GraphQL API, adapting many of the techniques that will be introduced in the playlist to the GraphQL format. Before we begin, let me leave you with a metaphor. Imagine that an application is a restaurant. Like an API's documentation, the menu describes what sort of things you can order. As an intermediary between the customer and the chef, the waiter is like the API itself. You can make requests to the waiter based on the menu, and the waiter will bring you what you ordered. Crucially, an API user does not need to know how the chef prepares a dish or how the backend application operates. Instead, they should be able to follow a set of instructions to make a request and receive a corresponding response. Developers can then program their applications to fulfill the request however they'd like. As an API hacker, you'll be probing every part of the metaphorical restaurant. You'll learn how the restaurant operates. You might attempt to bypass its bouncer or perhaps provide a stolen authentication token. Also, you'll analyze the menu for ways to trick the API into giving you the data you're not authorized to access, perhaps by tricking the waiter into handing you everything they have. You may even convince the API owner into giving you the keys to the whole restaurant. Well, that brings us to the end of this introduction video on API hacking. Now that you have seen the menu, you are ready for the starters. Feel free to leave your comments below. If you find this playlist helpful, please like the videos. That will help the videos to reach larger audience. Thank you for watching. Bye.